All right. Welcome to the iGaming podcast. Kristoffer Cassel, how's it going today?
Thank you. Yeah, it's good. Excited to be here, and looking forward to have a nice talk with you. I'm a fan of your podcast myself, so
that's
cool. Cool being here.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice to have you here. I mean, you've kind of made your company has, from the outside perspective at least, kind of made a rocket trajectory career lately, picking up a lot of new and interesting clients. And I mean, can you talk a little bit about Regily and kind of what your business does?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try not to be too marketing material guy, but me and a guy called Alexey Kuznetsov, we founded Regily almost 4 years ago. And the background was I worked at that point at Klarna, VP product, with a checkout product. So we created this, how do you get customers in the point of a transaction to leave your store with high conversion? And we saw that a lot of industries, I myself had worked in gaming before, and also with financial technologies. We saw that some industries actually want the opposite. They want to create a relationship. They want people to stay with you, so to speak, rather connect with you. But we believe a lot in this data-driven approach of how to optimize and so on. So we set out to create a framework, a technology that allows you to optimize how people check in, as we call it, how they connect to you. So that's when someone says, I want to be a customer, how can we make it as easy as possible? Well, actually, it's not only as easy as possible, because a lot of it is not that difficult. It's easy to say that my name is Kristoffer and I live here, or I work for this company, or whatever is asked for, but it's really boring, right? So we're trying to find out for each specific user, depending on who they are, where they are, what's the most efficient way to get them to connect with a great service or great brand. And when it comes to iGaming, it's our biggest sector, but we're active also in other sectors.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I want to get back to that a little bit later, actually, just to compare industries to each other and cultures within them and so forth. But before that, I want to slide into something a little bit different here. So I saw on LinkedIn that you shared the fact that you're on the podcast today, and you mentioned in your post that, like, hopefully I won't say anything too provocative. So I want to slide into the first topic of today, which is more kind of towards the company philosophy and leadership type of question, and a quite controversial topic is the modern way that companies sometimes take stances. You see a lot of organizations who sometimes even take political stances, like Nike is a great example of that, with the American football player taking the knee. They choose to sponsor him, purposely kind of alienating a part of their own demographic. But it seems to become more and more important these days for companies to actually take stances within the organizations. So I would like to start off with a mildly provocative question to ask you how you see that side, and is that something you think about with Regily, both internally and externally?
No, I agree. I think that's a sort of a trend. I think you can make it even wider, that there's sort of this a lot of times a culture that comes even from the top. We should be out running every day because me as the CEO likes a triathlon or whatever, or I have a political stance and I think the whole company should have that. I'm completely against that. I think that culture comes from the sum of everyone, and we're all sort of individuals in a way. And when I said something not too provocative, it's from the perspective that I'm trying to be myself. And I hope that everyone at Regily in the team feel that they can be themselves. I'm quite, of course, it's good when people do positive stuff. I'm not against that at all. We have ourselves, we do, for example, if there is NGOs or charities and so on, we offer our product for free to them. So of course, it's important to help where we can help. But this sort of view that the whole company should have the same political stance, I think that's ridiculous to me. And I think it's it goes even beyond that. So it's great, of course, if the company has, people that you work with, that you have some common interests and so on, but it needs to be genuine. That's the thing. And I think some people can do this genuinely, and that's great. But we try to how should I say, to help where we can, but let people be who they are and believe what they want.
Yeah. Because the reason I bring this up is I had a conversation the other day with a friend of mine who's the CEO of a quite decent sized iGaming company, and they get faced with these issues from time to time, where you would have a complaint from some employee with a particular let's say politically charged issue that they have. Whether it's whether it's being kind of the rights of minorities or these things, and obviously you want to be in a position where you let everyone want to be who they are, but at the same time sometimes you have to take stances in these questions where you just cannot satisfy everyone, let's say. And this is a little bit more alluding to what I mean, because if you are a small organization who takes stances early, like at this organization we stand for these values, for example, then perhaps you can build an organization that is harmonious in those values. But if you don't do anything, then you might have issues coming from left and right sometimes. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, definitely. I think it makes sense. But it's it's always, I should say, a sensitive ground to walk on in one way, because of course you need to be sensitive for people who feel unfairly treated and so on, and of course, like I take that for granted, that sort of racism or sexual, harassment and this sort of stuff, or all these questions about gender equality and so on. That's for me of course, that's a given that should not be a problem, and I think you need to be very sensitive if there is any indication of problems like that. But what I meant is we have a very strong belief in what we want to do, what Regily's purpose is, and our purpose is super narrow, but it's very important. We want to change how people connect with services and products throughout the world, right? And in that there is also some sort of cultural stuff, if you like, which is like what we believe in our communication internally and how we should behave to each other. And what we say at Regily is we're trying to be friends, right? Internally, that's sort of our main top line goal. And friends, it's sort of, people say, yeah, I'm also friendly, but I think friends is the opposite to friendly almost. I don't know how your friends are, Pierre, but
Thank you.
If you hit the bad drive on the golf course, they don't say like, "Oh, that's great, you tried." They say that drive sucked. What are you doing? Exactly. And that's how we try to be, which is also, of course, it's on the basis you can be very very straightforward. You can be very direct, like you are with your friends, but that's also on the basis that we like each other, we trust each other. We support each other when there is a problem and so on. So I think, I personally think that one solution to this big take a stance on these topics is be yourself, be friends. And if you can find that group of friends that are very talented and believe in the same things like we do, then that's super powerful. It's also, of course, you don't need to please everyone, to be honest.
No.
There is 6-7 billion people now, and we have 30 working or 35 working at Regily, and we need to pick the right ones, that the best talent, and attract those, but they also need to share our goal and our view of how to run things. And it's fine if you don't, it's no problem with that, but I think it's be very open with what are you expecting, what do you stand for, and so on.
Yeah. I think that this question, I mean, especially for both you and me, because we are running small organizations, and we are on the level where like your 30 staff, they probably all know each other. They all know, like, on a personal level and so forth. And but when I think maybe when you deal with like larger organizations, that kind of friendly atmosphere gets more and more diluted. And I think
potentially, yes. I think.
I mean, it gets more difficult, at least, to keep a group harmonious like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, this is a challenge, of course, and I think, I mean, I'm no expert on this at all. I just had the luck, I think, to work for some really great entrepreneurs in my past. I said I had a background in gambling, and sort of this being genuine. I think if the sort of top leadership is genuine, who they are, it sort of spreads throughout the organization, and I actually think it can scale. It's not about being 30 people, because it's sort of ripple effect on this. I was very, I think a big sort of point of how I think about this was my first day at Unibet, which I worked for a while, or Kindred now, at the London office, and it was a lot of people to meet and so on. And this guy came up to me, and is sort of, like casually dressed and quite like frank guy that just came up and like, oh, you're the new head of fraud prevention. What do you think about this? And what do you think about that? Quite open guy. And I said what I thought, which was basically like, I mean, he gave some suggestions for improvements, and I told him that's great, thanks for the suggestion, but we have tried that before, and it's actually the opposite. You're completely wrong on that, so no, we will not do that, and blah blah.
Yeah.
And then when this guy was going away, we'd stand and talk for 10 minutes or so. I asked him, oh, by the way, what are you doing here? And it was this open landscape in London. And you could see people going like, oh my God. And of course, I had been speaking for 10-15 minutes with Anders Ström, shooting down every suggestion he had. Because it's like, I didn't understand that he was a founder, and he didn't present himself like that either. And I think that's really a nice story, how, if you are genuine, people, I mean, a lot of the things, I mean, people want straight conversations, right? If you can be genuine, and I think Kindred is a great example of that, where that has sort of spread in the organization, and this sort of humility and being who you are. So that's a big role model, I think, on that.
Yeah. Because that's like a big difference from like traditional leadership, which is like very hierarchical, and like the modern way of leading, which, like you were saying, like a person like that would probably be really happy that you commit this that you are so straightforward and honest with him, because in the end of the day, it is what is the best for the organization. Like like you shouldn't let your ego come in between what is the best for the organization, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. But it's easier said than done.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a personality thing in a lot of ways too. I think, where like if you are strong in yourself, if you believe in yourself, and if you really think, if you really are a good worker, a hard worker, like you will be secure enough to be able to take criticism as a leader from your subordinates, right? Like. That's how it is. But so just to solidify a little bit, this going back to kind of taking stances as organizations. So I think I was thinking about this. There's a great example of where this can become very sensitive, and it's happening right now in an organization, a small organization, Spotify. I don't know if you followed this, Kristoffer, but the Spotify have recently launched their like podcast investments, where they are basically buying in some of the biggest podcasts in the world to exclusively host their content on Spotify, like Joe Rogan being one of them. Now Spotify as an organization are definitely an organization that takes stances generally, right? So they have a massive program for inclusion within their organization, that you can be who you want to be. When it comes to like sexual orientation and these type of things, and Joe Rogan is a quite controversial figure for that segment, right? So internally in Spotify, there's supposedly been a lot of backlash for them hosting Joe Rogan. Then you can ask yourself, is that justified or not? Because Joe Rogan says that he is very for inclusion as well, but like he had some like controversial guests and all of these things. So that's where kind of you have to. It becomes tricky for an organization sometimes when they have committed themselves to these strong kind of political positions.
Yeah, but I think it's hard to sort of judge if they think that's the right way to keep their team happy and to do what they believe in. It stands them free to do so, right? It's a sort of free market and a free society. I don't know. I don't think it's really relevant, my personal stance on that. But what I think is some of this is sort of like, I think we're too busy to think about this, really. I mean, it's some of this is sort of creating storms in water glasses, as we say in Swedish. Maybe it's not the right English expression, but
it makes sense.
It's nice to take stance. I don't know if they want to do it. I think we at Regily, as I said, we're focusing on doing what we believe we are good at, and then adding the part where we can help, like NGOs and so on. To connect with their givers and so on in a more efficient way, but we're trying to not, and I don't think so. We have very varied, if we talk in the team and so on, political talks and so on, and that's fine. I think that's
exactly, and perhaps it is something of a generational thing too, because it seems to me that like as we move forward more and more, like the younger and upcoming generation, more and more they take stances in their life, like whether it being like climate change or like protecting the environment, to a much bigger extent than when we were younger, for example. Like, so this wasn't activism.
You're calling me old, Pierre.
Yeah, I'm calling myself old as well. So we're in the same boat.
We are.
We're in the same boat. we are becoming the dinosaurs now. So, not yet, but we'll hold on to it soon. But in any case, so Kristoffer, I mean, with Regily, you seem to be a quite progressive organization yourself in general. I mean, we spoke about this before. You have a remote first kind of thought where you've already been remote for a long time. You've been floating the idea of having a 4-hour work week and this type of thing. Can you talk a little bit about these type of thoughts and in terms of being a progressive organization?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think it's, and I should probably correct you for a 4-hour work week. I think that's a
4-hour.
That's a 4-day work week. Yeah,
4-day work week. Yeah.
Exactly. No, but I think this has been sort of coincidence, but it's when we started Regily, we sort of had the feeling that we should be best at what we're doing, which is this technology that helps our partners, right? But that there is no reason why we should be not the best in every area, right? So, for example, our chief operational officer, Marcus, for example, he's spending a lot of time, how can we be the best and most efficient organization internally as well? Like, there's no reason to not think that, right? And when we started with that, one of the early things was this remote setup, like you say. And now, of course, with COVID, everyone is more or less remote. And I think what we did differently was to say from the start that the whole company should be remote. So even like the C-levels all teams should be spread out if they can. And if it happens to be that, for example, the management sit in Stockholm and make decisions, and then we ship it out to people who sort of execute, that won't work. That creates sort of a rift within the organization. So I don't know right or wrong, if it's right or wrong, but it's worked really well for us, which is to say that and to have, like, when you have a meeting, it's natural to use Google Hangouts or whatever you use, Microsoft Teams or whatever, and really allow people to live where they are. And the reason for that is it's really that we want to have the best people the best talent, and we've been super lucky to get a great team, I think, of experts. And to do that, it's really hard if you restrict yourself just recruit in Stockholm, for example. A lot of people think there are some cost aspects and so on. It's not really that. It's if you can widen your net, you can find better candidates and more specific talent. And for us, that has worked great. So I think everyone who talks about remote, my tip would be to make sure that the board meetings are not physical, that the management team don't meet up, and so on. And then you will have this ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you're hypocrites.
It's so funny that like be less social, like purposely don't meet each other, and but that's like you're saying, that creates the ripple effect, and that's how you truly become then the remote first organization. Because I did a podcast with Oscar Milbach the other week, who's the CEO of RakeTech, and they are just implementing this now, right? So RakeTech is becoming a remote first organization as well, and just like you were saying, the big selling point is that they can hire the best talent, wherever they are, pretty much in the world, rather than having to limit yourself to not only to Stockholm, if that's where your office is, but like everyone wants to live within this radius of like 20 kilometers or whatever from the office. So you have this like circle of people basically. But would you say that, like, since you founded the organization as a remote organization, like from the very very start, I mean, that must give your organization a quite big advantage, because if you are like Betsson, for example, it's going to be difficult to make that transition with all the culture that comes along with it and all the legacy that comes with how things have been done previously.
No, I agree. I think we've been lucky in that perspective, that we started off like this. It wasn't a big, like, we sat down for 6 weeks and thought about strategy about it. It sort of happened, and I think a lot of what we have done has been from that. We have this long-term vision where we want to go, and then sort of the next step is start walking, and I think this was sort of coincidence. And now we are, like I said, we're 33 people. We sit in 12 different countries. And that's another benefit which we didn't understand at that time, is sort of this cultural mix is super interesting, but also makes the company a lot stronger. When you talk about diversity and so on, we have almost every religion, every, racial backgrounds and so on in the company already, and that makes it sort of part of the quite natural, I think. But what we saw, and maybe that's I haven't give advice, we're still struggling, of course, trying to understand how can you, for example, I always talk about this, how can you replicate the talk that happens at the coffee machine? How does that happen? Because we have this vision, we want to be friends, not friendly, we want to be friends. How can you become friends if you can't have a beer together, or have a lunch or a coffee or whatever? And I think here there is a lot still to explore for all organizations. We're trying to really learn from the best and share our stuff, but something that has worked extremely well for us, which I think is a concrete, I never really want to give advice because we're still trying to figure stuff out, but this one I can actually recommend people to at least try. Is when we get a new person into the team, we always do this half an hour presentation where they present themselves, just them, not talk about work, not talk about CV, but with slides. Who are you here, right? So it's a lot like, we had a guy starting the other week, he talked a lot about his mountain climbing that he's into, his his girlfriend and so on, where he has been moving around in his youth, has been on some trips and so on. That we feel is really, really powerful, that you understand the person outside the meeting, and that sort of brings you a bit closer to feeling like friends, that you can be direct in a call and say, no, sorry, that's bullshit, you're wrong, without the other guy flipping out and saying, you're an asshole,
Yeah, exactly. because that's a big thing, right? To get to know people to the point where you know where you have them, like how far can you take the conversation, and how direct can you be with them? Because obviously everyone is individuals in the end of the day, right?
Yeah, but I also think like this sort of culture and mutual respect and so on, it also starts, I think, a lot at the recruitment stage. If you're lucky and get good, talented people, they tend to sort of respect each other. Everyone at Regily has something that the others look up to. Everyone has a special skill. Everyone are experts in their own area, and that's sort of, I think, eases that as well. To be honest, it's
like a collection of superheroes, basically.
but it doesn't need to be superheroes. It's not about that, but that you. A lot of people spend a lot of time, I think, about restructuring the organizations and thinking about stuff, but maybe too little time on thinking about recruitment. That's my view.
Yeah, that's true. So does this put more pressure on, for example, measuring output to make sure that your employees on an individual basis are performing, being remote first?
I don't think necessarily it does. This is a very interesting topic, and I think I think there is some things which is that I believe strongly in is, of course, if you work on something that you understand that this is important, and if I don't deliver on this, the organization actually cares about it, right? And this is whether you're physical or remote. I think that's super important, of course. I believe, of course, people can take responsibility for their own working day and so on. That's natural. But I think we are running, like, maybe because we're remote, I don't know. I probably would do the same if we sit in the same office, but quite, concrete weekly sprints, daily stand-ups. I'm doing this, I'm going to do this until tomorrow. And what our experience, at least, and what my feeling is that people get the most engaged and are the most happy at work when they feel that what they are doing is absolutely critical for the business. And we want to have 30 people who are critical to Regily success, And that means, of course, that if you don't deliver, you understand that's a problem, So, it's a tough question. I know that some, like, if you look at some of these remote services like Upwork and so on, they even do now for outsourcing, they even do screen recordings of every minute you bill your client. And that's on the tough side of things. Then you have the sort of physical world where I know at Klarna, for example, we call it open screen policy, that we were sitting in such a way that other people all the time see what's on your screen. And that was outspoken, like a way just to sort of, I guess, have some control. And normally, of course, when you walk into work, you say, hi guys, what are you working on right now, and so on. That, I think, is natural even in a remote setting. That of course, you understand what people are working on. So there is some middle ground here. I don't think you should go all the way, or we are not going all the way to, here's a ticket, come back in a week and tell us how it has been, Exactly. We don't think that's engaging for anyone. And we're trying to sort of replicate virtually stuff that would happen at an office. And we believe in that. I know other people believe in this sort of asynchronous, more of a open source type of thinking, but who knows? We will see. We're learning, I think, every week and every month.
Yeah, definitely improving software. Because I guess what I'm thinking, because for us, we are going through our experimentation with our small little organization to have our employees working from home mostly. And something I was thinking of is just the hot potato of mental health in general right now. A lot of organizations, this has popped up on the agenda on the HR tables to make sure that your staff is doing well mentally as well. And I think is that the problem with remote organizations, that if someone is not feeling well mentally, if you are in an office as a manager, it's potentially easier to see if someone is not doing that well, whereas remotely perhaps it's more difficult. So like you have really talented individuals, but anyone can be in a bad situation in their life. They can have a bad period. Anything can happen. And how do you mitigate and discover that early?
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I think that is a challenge to sort of pick that up. I don't think it's harder remote. I just think we haven't figured out exactly how to do it, and maybe no organization has. But I think a good starting point is always like, if you're worried about something like that, schedule some time in your diary for it and take care of it. And for example, we are running one-on-ones, very, very like not structured, completely unstructured to be honest, but very regularly with every person, just to try to pick this up. And that's something I think in a remote setting people sometimes even forget. They do it once half a year or something. It's not about that. And maybe there's other ways to find that out. I think I don't see a reason why it would be harder in this type of conversation to say, oh, sorry, I'm feeling bad because of this or that.
Exactly.
I could probably tell you, Pierre, but
of course.
No, but you need to have those conversations, and I guess that's the sort of, you need to put the structure that allows this remote structure to work. At least that's how we think about it.
Yeah, it's a good point actually, thinking about it now, because one of the good things with COVID that has brought us kind of closer together in some extent is the ability that we now have Zoom meetings on a much more frequent basis. And rather than like before, when you would take a meeting in person, you would schedule an hour in the calendar. This was like the standard meeting invite was always 1 hour. And now moving into like a digital side of things, the Zoom meetings are usually scheduled for 30 minutes, for example, meaning that you have a lot more time, obviously, to take more meetings or to take more short meetings if you don't have the commute, or even like going back and forth to the meeting room and planning all of that. And I mean, it does eat time, and that does give you a lot of more extra time to kind of have these shorter one-on-ones, for example, just to check up on a one-to-one basis. How's it going? What's your plans for today?
No, I agree, and I also think that it's not all video conference either. Like if you use, I guess most organizations use Slack, for example, which we're using. We have banned internal emails, so we're not allowed to email each other. It's only Slack. Yeah,
that's interesting.
Because the reason is because I hate emails myself. I think it's so inefficient. So when we were 3 guys, we just decided, let's not mail each other, and that has continued. So, and I think such rules, I mean, it might sound, it's not that radical. So, but that's something I can also recommend. If you do that, then people start chat with each other, and that interaction is actually quite good for like, yo, what's up? How do you feel today? It doesn't all need to be, let's have this video call and I'm going to be all serious, right? So you shouldn't forget about that sort of chat. I think especially people that are even younger than us, Pierre.
That's how they communicate. I mean,
yeah, exactly, and it's a natural way of communicating, and it's a natural way to pick up if someone is unwell, or to have this sort of coffee machine talk as well. So
that's so interesting that you banned internal emails. Can you tell, like, what's how did you come to that conclusion? And is there any pros and cons with that, or would you recommend any organization to?
I think whether you use Slack or some other service like that, I think it's super efficient once you get used to it, creating different threads, and how we work with, different channels and so on. We have hundreds of channels for different special topics and so on. And I don't really see the need for email internally, right? If you want something, write it. It's searchable, but it also gives an openness in the organization. Almost all our channels are open for everyone. So if you want to read about some legal discussion somewhere, just go into the channel and read it, right? It's there. It's searchable. And this sort of email where email is very, very private in one way, right? You send it to you, no one else can read it. And sure, there's some topics that needs to be discussed like that, but most decisions don't. We can be open. I mean, I can stand for most of my decision at least, and I think everyone else can. It's good to share and be open. I got a bit inspired from one company in Stockholm that I know a bit that shared the email accounts even 10 years ago. So anyone can go in and read your emails freely. To have that sort of open environment. I think Slack is sort of the next generation of that, where you can read. Of course, there's certain things like when it comes to human resources or these sort of things that you might need to restrict access to, fine, but then you need to think about it, and a natural way is like be open and share information.
So very interesting. It's a very progressive way of kind of moving into, like you're saying, the new generation is much more reliant on communicating in different ways than like the older generation. And sometimes the older generation, I would say a little bit older than us now, Kristoffer, but sometimes the older generation, they want to like hold on to how things have always been done. And you always hear this, like the older generation always complains about the new generation and what they're doing wrong and so forth, without understanding that the world around them is changing. And it's good to have that understanding. I think that like as we get older, I mean, there is a new generation that is coming, and they are doing things differently, and we have to adapt to that, and we will be the leaders, of this new generation.
I agree. And I don't think it's only older generation. I mean, every person, there is a sort of psychological pain to change how you do stuff. It's really tough. And that's why I said we didn't tell people, oh, let's try to use more Slack than email. That doesn't work. We've tried that a lot actually before. So the way to say it is like, we don't do email, and then we take that physical pain together. We learn together what works, what doesn't work, and we can sort of create this as a company. I believe in that, and I believe that forcing change within an organization, get people to think about how we do stuff and so on. Sometimes it's about just pushing the status quo and then sort of figuring it out. Saying we will be remote first and then figure out how we, I don't know, onboard new guys, or how we get to know each other and so on.
Yeah, fair enough. So on to something else, Kristoffer. I'm curious to ask you actually, like as you have founded and grown Regily, and to where you are today, what would you say is like the one thing you're most happy with that you have done in your organization, and what is your biggest regret in building Regily?
That's a great question. That's
Sorry
one of those.
It's
one of those you should have prepared for any such situation. No, but I think spontaneously, what I'm most happy about is that we've been, like I said, super lucky from start, getting a good team, hiring people. I talked about the team, but also like around the company when it comes to our angel investors or our board and so on, where we have been, because in the end, as I said, I believe strongly that's a sort of ripple effect, and when we build a company bigger, that will affect a lot. So that I'm super happy, and that goes from like, everyone who's involved in this is so different backgrounds. Everything from Anders Borg, who's a former finance minister, who's an owner, back down to someone who's really specialized at a certain, JavaScript coding way. And that's cool. So many people with different backgrounds, we brought them together, and it was sort of just a dream that me and Alexey had. So that I'm super proud of. I think regretting, it's hard. I think we have a lot of regrets. So when I'm thinking, it's not that we don't have regrets, but I think something we have, I think, more and more understood over time is that it's not about, for example, if a team member, if they are good at what they do, or if, an investor is nice or whatever, it's all about, do they fit into this? Do they want the same things as us? Is it a good fit? It's sort of, in the beginning, you feel a bit, and now I'm rambling a bit, but in the beginning you feel a bit like uncertain. You need to listen to people, but you also need to believe, I think, in what you are doing is right, and take the stance that we will do it this way. And we've been stronger and stronger on that, I think, internally. We believe in this. We believe to act like friends, for example. I will tell you if you do something bad, we're still friends. And then if people like that, they join the bandwagon, so to speak. And if they don't, it's fine. And in the beginning, you're a bit more trying to find your way and trying to please everyone. And we understand that, like I said, it's about finding the right people and the people that share our sort of ambition level and so on. So,
yeah, fair enough. And on to a little bit the product in general of Regily. I'm curious to kind of talk a little bit about it, because the product that you're building is very specialized, obviously, like registration process and optimizing that. And it seems to me that it's based very much on kind of like years and years of A/B testing and so forth. And I'm curious to ask you, like, you built this product over the course of 4 years. Like, did you have kind of like eureka moment type of thing in your organization where kind of things started to fall into place? Because I would imagine that, like, in the beginning, coming to a point where you actually become relevant to the market, it's not the easiest with a product like this.
No, exactly. That is a challenge, and I think that, like you say, we are data driven. It's sort of, we built this around a technical framework where we can learn very quickly and improve it, and that's sort of an investment to build, of course. And we're sort of now, I would say, after 4 years, in the position where it really is starting to take off in terms of getting the benefits from this. So
yeah, and you can really, from an outside point of view, you really notice that now. Yeah, like it's really noticed, like, in the type of clients you're getting and so forth. Yeah,
definitely. Cool. And I think it's sort of, that's fun for us, and the nice part about getting more clients for us, and I think almost all of us, we're sort of product geeks, is that we get more data. When we sign a big contract, of course there's some revenues and all of this, but in the end it's data. Some people talk about top line, like what they measure in the company. And other CEOs and so on. Our top line, the sort of, it's not revenue, it's data. Like the more data that flows through our system, the better and more relevant we will be, right? So we're sort of measuring that. That's our top line, our top goal, to get more and more usage of the framework that we have built. I think in practical terms is, of course, getting the first client is huge for any startup. Luckily, it was great customer also in gaming or gambling. So Wunderino has worked with us since start and been a great customer. And it's cool also to see they have been successful on their market when using us and so on. So that has been great. And the other part, I think, was when you got this really, really big organizations speaking to us and working with us and so on. So, and that's even outside gaming. So, when the head of product at WordPress, for example, who produces sites, when they call you and ask, how they should do stuff, then you get a bit proud,
That's a huge moment, obviously, because I spoke to a friend of mine the other day about I was telling him I'm going to do this podcast with you, Kristoffer, and I told him about Regily and your product and what you do, and he hadn't heard about Regily specifically, and his question was that, but it's a registration process, like, it's just, how hard can it be? It's just as simple as possible. Like, what would you say? Like, can you explain a bit more, like, your product and why it's relevant and why it's more than just like simplicity in a couple of fields?
Absolutely. I think I've quoted there is some quote that is sort of, the hardest thing to do is to create something really simple. So that's the starting point, I think. But it's relatively easy to optimize a sign-up experience and make it fun and intriguing, and that you don't get this sort of bad feeling in your stomach when you want to do it in one market, maybe for one type of personas or users. What our system is great at doing is doing at scale. So last year we had from 165 countries. The 165th that end consumers using our platform was Papua New Guinea, for example, just to tell the scale of it. And then it's actually getting quite complex. The other part, so it's like technically different jurisdictions, different licenses. How do you do now, for example, in Germany, in the most efficient way? What is converting the best, if we look at an iGaming perspective? And we have solutions that we, constantly optimize, and that is better and better every week. But I think the other thing, so one is the sort of technical complexity when you work in many licenses and many countries, The other complexity is understanding what really works and doesn't. Like, I think a big eureka moment, going back to that, is we started doing this A/B test and trying what works, what doesn't work. And I think 2 or 3 meetings in a row, me and my co-founder, we think of ourselves like product experts and product geeks in some way, and that we're sort of good at this. And we were wrong every second meeting on, will this work or that work, It is quite illogical. It doesn't make sense, really, of course. Like, when you get this form and need to fill in stuff, why is that not appealing for you, right? And how can you make that fun? It's fun to play Candy Crush, but to do this is not fun, And there's sort of this emotional context to it. And then I think, obviously, like, the technical side, it's this connecting different services in different countries that help, like Bank ID in Sweden and all of this. That's a big job for us as well, all these connections we have. But in the longer run, it's sort of a bigger question, I think, for us. And what we're trying to fix is this check-in, as we call it. It's not only sign up, but it's really about how do you become a customer. And so we see our role a bit bigger. And one of those things is that, most of the people, or at least a lot of people who sign up for a gambling site, come from an affiliate, right? You don't just open the browser and type Casumo/register or whatever company it is. And we started thinking about that, if you look at that process, how it is today, you click on a casino, you get this landing page that starts to load. Landing page usually says the same thing as you have seen. And already here it's 6 or 6.5 seconds in average just to load that. Then you have to click again, register, new load, and you get to this registration page, right? We have launched a product now, or a technology that allows everyone who uses our framework to launch their signups at the affiliate. So when the user says, I want to connect with, let's say Mr. Green, I want to connect with Mr. Green, you should be able to do it there and then, right? Without all this loading, without this stuff. And I think that's actually, we believe a lot in that. I believe that there shouldn't be any landing pages. Why do you even have that? Like, I believe, if I would do some predictions, so I predict the death of landing pages. I would also predict the death of passwords and emails and usernames. That's also extremely old stuff.
Yeah.
And
what is it being replaced with?
Yeah, exactly. When we are working on that stuff, so, we have taken quite a long-term vision on where we want to do. We want to make it easy for people to connect with services online. And where we are now, it's, like I said, it's sort of the starting point. And we are investing quite a lot in the R&D and so on around these topics as well. How can we, optimize the whole connection? And then it's getting complex, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Because, in the end of the day, what you want to do is remove as much friction as possible. But you said something interesting before as well, not just removing the friction, but then making the process fun as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is a lot of studies on that. And you probably can Google up even better studies, but where they look at the average time people spend per website online. Yeah. It's dropping every year, and it's been doing so for 20 years or so, since the dawn of internet. And it's down to like 8 seconds now, right? And you normally say that, like, the attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds.
Yeah.
People are behaving like that, They are just swimming around, and the least friction that you have, you don't think like, oh no, I won't sign up, or no, I won't apply for this credit card. You just do it tomorrow, right? That's what you think, and then tomorrow might never come. So I think that's the sort of fundamental idea of what we are doing, is that people have less and less attention, and it's dropping every year. And how can you convince this goldfish by tricking, basically tricking is the wrong word, but incentivize with like gamification elements, with how you present what the challenge is ahead, how can you break it up in an efficient way, and also how you use technology. Actually, my sort of, as I said, we were thinking about starting Regily, and we saw this need for this check-in from other industries, but the sort of tipping point was I was going to the airport, and this Norwegian credit card was promoted, at the airport. You've probably seen it at Arlanda.
I know.
And actually, the guy who was selling it was a super nice guy, and I sort of wanted a credit card at that point. So we talked a bit, and it was really great product and really cheap and so on. So I said, yeah, let's do this. I want this card. And obviously, he don't hand me the card. He handed me an iPad with his gray fields, And it wasn't anything hard. It's sort of, my name is Kristoffer Cassel. I worked at that time at Klarna. I make this much money, etc., etc. But I remember looking at that and then telling him like, oh, yeah, but my flight is leaving soon, so I'll do it on the way back. And then I started like running away from him. The problem was just the flight was 2 hours later. And then I started thinking like, I'm 37 years old, right? Or at that time, maybe I was 37. Like, why am I like lying to this guy, running away from him just to avoid these forms, So it's something really interesting with that. And I think that situation happens millions of times per day online. Someone who, like, you like the marketing, you even like the product, and they have sold it. You're sold. You say, I want to become a customer. And still, like half of everyone who listens to this, half of your customers are dropping off or more after they say, yes, I want this. I want to become a customer. And that's just insane, right? So this sort of, you can always analyze, but when you feel it sort of emotionally like, wow, this is so weird. Like, why did I run away from this guy? Then I understand, okay, let's at least try. And we have tried for 4 years. And I think, like I said, we've been lucky, but we're sort of just in the starting phase of, we don't only want to change the gaming industry, we want to change much broader than that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the why would you limit yourself to the gaming industry? I mean, I think the gaming industry is a natural customer of yours because the removing friction and removing bottlenecks in the acquisition process is absolutely vital for the iGaming industry. When every customer is so valuable in comparison to other industries. But can you talk a little bit about like what other industries are you looking into as well, working with tech-wise?
Yeah, exactly. Like you say, anywhere where each customer is very, very valuable, where you have multiple geographies or like complex regulated industries. So gaming is big for us. We also work in fintech, like some really big online brokerage firms are using us. Subscription services, when you sign up for something and pay, across the board. And there, it's quite fun, actually. I think I might have mentioned it before, but it's fun. When I spoke to a client which within fintech, like they're a huge business, and they say to me like, "Oh, it's so cool that you work with these gaming companies." And I was almost like, "What?" And this is an American company. It's like, "What?" Yeah, like they are really in the forefront, and we are looking up to these guys. It's like cutthroat competition, and like they are so good at tech and all of this stuff. And I was a bit shocked, not because I don't agree with him, but no one says that. And I think it's for like the gaming industry, at least sort of the people I speak are very humble persons, but sometimes it's sort of overly humble as well. I mean, gaming is one of the most dynamic industries with a sort of high level of tech, high level of competition. I think sometimes sometimes people should be even more proud of that. But yeah, so it's not only that we learn from other industries and can sort of cross-learn between like fintech and gaming. Also, the fact that we work with gaming companies drives our other business as well. They like that. They understand that, okay, the forefront is there, right?
It's so interesting because, I mean, we have the perception oftentimes that the gaming industry is looked down upon in many ways. And it was Peter Paul Detroit, the the chairman of the Netherlands trade organization. He said that kind of gaming has no friends. You know, we are kind of alone, and that's how it feels a lot of times. You know, the game industry isn't communicating with many other industries. So it's interesting, I think, to have like that type of input for the industry. And like you're saying, we are like very much in the forefront of technology, and that is really something throughout. I mean, you've been in the industry for many years. I mean, the same for me, just seeing how products are developing, how data driven they are, and how forward thinking the organizations are, how progressive the organizations are, from everything from HR perspective to tech and so forth. I think the industry, I agree with you, like the industry should sometimes just stop up and kind of pat themselves on the shoulder in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's and we see that because we work with different companies. One is, of course, the sort of adaption, but we also have quite good insight, of course, about like the technology stack about in different industries and so on, and how people work. And it's sort of like what some of the best developers within iGaming, what they are doing in 2 days takes 2 months or maybe 2 years in the old industries, if you like.
Exactly.
It's really a lot of talent and a lot of nice guys, and I think we have, or the industry has more friends than what they think, and I think we should acknowledge that.
I think that's a beautiful way of ending today's podcast. The game industry, we have more friends than we think. So Kristoffer, thank you so much for today. I was thinking just again, we started off a bit controversial or provocative, and let's end it with a little bit provocation or controversy as well. The US election, 13 days left. Biden or Trump?
I bet on Trump, but that's so I would say with my wallet, Trump.
Okay. We won't go into more detail on that. Okay, brilliant, Kristoffer. Thank you so much for today. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Also, thanks to the sponsors, Pragmatic Solutions, for allowing us to make this to happen. And we'll see you soon, everybody. Thank you, Kristoffer. Any last words?
Thank you. No, thanks a lot, and nice chat. Look forward to speak more. Ciao.
Brilliant. Stay here. Ciao.